Yo, what the fuck is going down, everybody? It's your boy Sauceman X. I'm checking back at you niggas with another goddamn video today. But anyways, man, we're back with another political videos, goddamn bitch. And you already see this shit by the title. This video is obviously going to be about the fall of Afghanistan, okay? The fall of Afghanistan, because we already know it's the biggest thing happening in politics within the past few days. And we already know that Afghanistan's government is completely falling apart. The Taliban, which is obviously a terrorist organization, is currently taking over the vast majority of, Afghanistan. And the entire state of Afghanistan is completely falling apart. The state is completely going, completely falling apart. So we already know that, in my personal opinion, this is obviously the biggest problem, throughout the entire 21st century. After 20 years, okay, after 20 years of, fighting in Afghanistan, we already know that, the entire state is falling. In this video, I'm basically going to be talking about that and why Joe Biden is essentially responsible for this, because we already know that this entire situation could have been completely preventable if Joe Biden didn't, completely fuck everything up as it pertains to negotiations with Afghanistan for absolutely no legitimate reasons. So I'm going to be talking about that, exposing all of the leftist hypocrisy, because for some weird reason, the same leftists that are supposed to be anti-war are going to be the very same people defending Joe Biden for supporting the Afghanistan war for the vast majority of his career, and actually, trying to make it seem like everything is Trump's fault just because he tried to stop the war. So we already know I'm going to be talking about that and all the hypocrisy within that, and why Joe Biden essentially should be impeached and removed from office based on these entire situations. So let me just go ahead and get right on into this shit. So going on to the first point of this video for why Joe Biden is essentially responsible for the fall of Afghanistan is obviously because Donald Trump, okay, essentially he basically broke Donald Trump's peace deal agreement for absolutely no legitimate reason, so we can try to take credit for Donald Trump's success, okay? Literally the only reason for why 40 million people's lives are literally being destroyed right now and people have to flee the country, tens of thousands of people are dying, is just because that, Joe Biden wanted to win some political points over Trump for absolutely no legitimate reason, because we already know that Donald Trump, since he's actually knows things about, foreign policy, and his presidency proved it, especially in the Middle East, because we already know that, George Bush started the war in the Middle East for absolutely no legitimate reason. When Barack Obama was president, he decided to continue to bomb these countries for absolutely no legitimate reason. And then Donald Trump becomes president. He doesn't start any new additional wars. He's basically spent his entire presidency trying to get more troops off of Afghanistan and bring them back home. And literally near the end of his presidency, okay, he essentially signed a historic peace deal agreement with Afghanistan, and we already know this, okay, signed a historic peace deal, with Afghanistan. The Afghani government completely agreed with it. Trump himself completely agreed with it, along with the other historic peace deal he's made in the Middle East, which we already know that's actually true, but of course nobody on the left is going to mention that or give him credit for his actual accomplishments, and Joe Biden wants to take away his accomplishments. And the Taliban themselves, okay, the very people that are actually going in and trying to take over the government, the Taliban themselves are literally agreed to Donald Trump's peace deal agreement. So we already know it was an amazing peace deal agreement, and it was actually, agreed that, these individuals will be taken out of Afghanistan, completely no United States presence in Afghanistan on May 1st, 2021. And we already know that there was absolutely no evidence, okay? And of course, you're gonna have people on the left coming up with conspiracy theories saying that, oh, this still would have happened regardless if Trump was president or not. But there was literally no evidence that that was going to be the case, because the Taliban and the Afghani government agreed with each other on the withdrawal date on May 1st. They simply agreed with that. So why would they just magically go against each other and start fighting? But the problem is that Joe Biden became president and he wanted to take credit for Trump's accomplishments. Okay, he wanted to take credit for Trump's accomplishment because he didn't want to, he didn't want people to know that Donald Trump would be the very person responsible for ending the longest war in American history, essentially, because no president has ever had a war for more than 20 years, basically. So Donald Trump was essentially going to be responsible for ending the longest war in American history, and all the credit would have been on him after 20 years of Joe Biden being in government, George Bush, completely fucking everything up, Barack Obama fucking everything up, Democrats, corporate Democrats, globalists, continuing to fight these useless wars. He did not want to give Trump credit, as him being the man responsible ending America's longest war. So what he did, is that when he was president, he essentially broke and violated the peace treaty deal, and switched the date to September 11th. And he obviously switched all the way to September 11th, 2021, because he wanted to, make it a symbolic, ridiculous date and try to take credit for Trump's accomplishments with the withdrawal of Afghanistan. But it didn't even work. What Joe Biden essentially did is that he violated the peace treaty deal that was supposed to completely, go through on May 1st just for political reasons, just to go against Donald Trump. It literally makes absolutely no fucking sense, because you're literally violating a peace treaty deal in one of the most dangerous countries in the entire world. So it doesn't make sense to try to change the date just for political reasons. But Joe Biden obviously doesn't care about that. He knows nothing about diplomacy, so he's just going to go in and go through with that. So we already know that what happened is that the Afghanistan government started going against the Taliban, and the Taliban viewed this entire, violating of a peace treaty deal as a betrayal. Okay, and there was obviously conflict between the Afghani government and the Taliban themselves. So we already know that it was essentially a complete violation of the the peace treaty deal in one of the most dangerous countries in the world. So it would literally make no logistical sense to even do that, and they obviously perceived it to be betrayal. Because if you do anything in the Middle East and you sign an agreement, when you literally had a useless war going on for 20 years and you have a de facto government along with that in Afghanistan, which the Taliban would not be the biggest fan of, and then you go in and violate the peace treaty deal and say that you're going to wait 4 months, that's obviously going to cause some conflict. So Joe Biden is directly responsible for the initiation of the conflict as it pertains to everything that's happening in the Middle East, because there's no evidence that this would have happened regardless. And another thing, okay, so not only is Joe Biden responsible for the Taliban deciding to go against the entire state of Afghanistan, it's also Joe Biden's fault because he logistically did everything wrong, completely fucked everything up. There's obviously already video footage of plenty of guns, okay? There's plenty of, fully automatic assault rifles just laying around, okay? Hundreds of guns, hundreds of ammunitions, hundreds of, weapons that they can possibly use, or they're actually using to take over the Afghanistan government. They just completely left it all out, and Joe Biden was president, okay? After he, unnecessarily extended the, the date of removing people from, the Afghanistan, he essentially left all these weapons out and did absolutely nothing for like 6 months, when he could have just went in and took those fucking guns out so the Taliban wouldn't have free ammunition. But they just left it out, okay? They just left it out and just perfectly supplied the Taliban with all these weapons, which is obviously leading to the mass destruction of the entire country. This all could have been avoided if Joe Biden knew what he was doing, but he clearly has no idea what he's doing, and he also fucked up the entire treaty deal that would have actually caused more peace in the Middle East. So he essentially fucked everything up for absolutely no legitimate reason. Of course, the main counter argument for people on the left is that, this would have happened regardless if Trump was president or not, and we already know that that's completely nonsensical, and it doesn't make any sense, because in the very peace treaty, it literally, which the Taliban agreed to, the Taliban was obviously going to get lots of money and lots of resources to actually continue to try to control the Afghanistan government from within. So we already know that if the peace treaty was not violated, it wouldn't have incentivized a violent response, and it would have allowed the Taliban to continue to get more money and more resources to continue to influence the Afghan government. Okay, they would have just completely sat back, did absolutely nothing, because they knew they had the resources necessary to control everything that's happening without actually causing violence. But violating the peace treaty was viewed as a betrayal, which has obviously led to the entire violence itself. So Joe Biden is primarily responsible for that, and he gave them a lot of ammunition, which literally makes absolutely no fucking sense. Another reason for why Joe Biden has absolutely no idea what he's talking about is obviously because earlier this month, or earlier last month, he essentially said that it was basically impossible for the Taliban to do exactly what they're doing right now, which is funny because even CNN reported on this, so, not that many people on the left can disagree. So we already know that he essentially said that nothing was going to happen. The Afghan military was just way too outnumbered by the United States, so there was absolutely nothing bad that was going to go wrong. Completely horrible projection, considering the fact that the Taliban is basically taking over the entire country, and the Afghanistan, military is actually standing down. So we already know that this literally makes absolutely no fucking sense, and Joe Biden has absolutely no idea what he's doing. And I believe another reason for why the Taliban is continuing to retaliate is obviously because they know that Joe Biden's not going to do anything about it, and Joe Biden is essentially, a very weak leader. We already know that Donald Trump, they essentially respect Donald Trump with the diplomacy, which is why they agreed with everything that's going on. And as soon as he violates the deal, they actually go in and attack. So they know that Joe Biden's not going to do anything about it, and their projection was right, okay, because it was already factually proven that Joe Biden himself, okay, is literally trying to bribe the Taliban, offering to give them money, okay, as if they're actually going to stop taking over the country, offering to give them money just so they can not take over the U.S. embassy or take over the rest of the country, which literally makes absolutely no fucking sense, and it's not going to help anything because they have absolutely no strategy to deal with the situation, and they completely mismanaged it and made all the incorrect predictions along the way, which literally makes absolutely no fucking sense. And going on to the next point of this video is obviously that Joe Biden is doing absolutely nothing about it, which obviously furthers the point that the Taliban knew that, Joe Biden was an incompetent leader, and so does the entire world. But you also have to understand that, the Afghan government is completely controlled by the United States. It's essentially a de facto government. So the fact that, the Afghan soldiers are not actually doing anything about it is because they're actually siding with the Taliban, because they know that the United States obviously has very weak leadership, and they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. They're completely mismanaging this entire situation, and they're honestly getting fed up with the United States government, with this war that lasted for 20 years. And Joe Biden is actually, completely eliminating the possibility, of actually reconciliation with the peace treaty, because he decided to go in and violate it for no reason. So obviously the Afghan government, which is controlled by the United States, is actually going to go in and stand down, because they're honestly getting sick and tired of the incompetence. And another point of this video is obviously that Joe Biden is essentially on vacation at this point, literally has absolutely no idea what he's doing. He gave a speech earlier today where he was trying to blame Donald Trump for everything, which already disproven for why it doesn't make any sense to blame Donald Trump, because he actually understood diplomacy and he tried to take credit for his accomplishments and fucked everything up. So we already know the entire Biden administration is falling apart, and the entire mainstream media, complex is completely falling apart, because they're basically, going in and actually going against Joe Biden at this point. You already have people like Jen Psaki taking a vacation. You have the entire administration taking a vacation, having absolutely no idea what they're doing, and it's because their narrative is completely falling apart. And the entire world, okay, literally the entire world literally saw the display of the incompetence of the, United States government. Okay, Afghanistan's government was completely okay, completely okay with Donald Trump, on the side of Donald Trump, on the side of the Taliban, but Joe Biden came in and just fucked everything up, and now the Afghanistan government is siding with the Taliban because of his incompetence. So we already know that it literally made absolutely no fucking sense to do anything that he's doing, and he's essentially taking a vacation in the middle of the biggest crisis of this entire century, which actually proves how horrible of a president he is, which, it's essentially no excuses for this, okay? There's essentially no excuses, no justification for doing what he's doing right now. He's literally a completely incompetent leader who is literally causing this country to continue to be worse. All these crises, you have the gas crisis, the inflation, all these ridiculous spending bills, the border crisis, and then you also have the entire Afghanistan government completely falling apart just because of a decision that he didn't even have to do. Okay, Joe Biden could have easily done absolutely nothing, and everything would have been better in Afghanistan right now. But of course, for political reasons, he had to inadvertently, or actually even deliberately, destroy the lives of every single person who lives in Afghanistan. So we already know it's basically being taken over at this point, and it's because of Joe Biden's incompetence that it's going to continue to be taken over, and he's going to do absolutely nothing. So this is essentially an embarrassment. Okay, this is essentially, Joe Biden is essentially a national embarrassment at this point, because he is clearly displaying his incompetence, doing absolutely nothing about it, deliberately making it worse over time. So it essentially proves that more and more people are going to go against Joe Biden, which is obviously going to cause more people to vote Republican. So expect this entire situation to completely destroy the media's narrative. And, considering that this is obviously a much worse problem than anybody could have anticipated, the entire world is going to be mainly focused on what's happening in Afghanistan and the incompetence of the people who are supposed to be running the Afghanistan government and keep the Afghanistan government in agreement with what they're doing, which Joe Biden failed to do at all of that. So we already know that, it's going to make Joe Biden look bad, and he's essentially a laughingstock to the entire world, but pretty much everyone already knew that. And there's only like a fringe group of people in this country who are going to go against, the people who are simply criticizing Joe Biden. So essentially, we don't even have a government at this point, okay? We don't even have a government. We don't really have a presidency at this point, because they're on vacation doing nothing in the middle of this huge crisis, which is absolutely embarrassing. See, Joe Biden should obviously, this is probably not going to happen, so, don't expect this to happen, obviously, but Joe Biden should obviously be impeached or removed from office for completely mishandling this entire situation, inadvertently causing the deaths of tens of thousands of people just for political reasons, and obviously violating the Constitution with the eviction moratorium, violating the Third Amendment, doing all these horrible things, allowing this border crisis to happen. It's obviously an impeachable offense, and it's pretty obvious that he has absolutely no idea what he's doing. Completely, he's completely moronic at this point, okay? He clearly is being controlled by other people, and he can't even make any coherent decisions himself. So obviously, in my personal opinion, he's obviously very unfit to become president, and he's literally doing absolutely nothing to solve this crisis. So this is essentially, okay, if you're going to put yourself in a position to only try to completely destroy a peace treaty deal for political reasons, to the point where you're destroying tens of millions of people's lives, you should not remain president of the United States. Okay, in my personal opinion, he should be 25th, completely removed from office, impeached and removed from office, and the entire administration, who's currently doing nothing about the situation, should obviously all be removed from office. But of course, this isn't going to happen, because there's actually no accountability, and he's actually trying to blame Trump and blame the Afghan government, even though the Afghan government is negatively responding to the horrible actions that Joe Biden himself took. So we already know that Joe Biden should be impeached and removed from office due to his absolute incompetence, to the point where it's destroying 40 million plus people's lives, and he's still not taking enough action to deal with the situation. This is obviously something worse. and anything Trump did as president, and he just did everything. He did the worst thing possible throughout this entire situation. You have thousands of, American soldiers stranded in Afghanistan. They're pretty much going to be killed by the Taliban at this point, and Joe Biden is literally doing little to nothing about the entire situation. So that's why I think he should be removed from office. So anyways, tell me what you think in the comment section. Just my reaction to this entire situation and Joe Biden fucking everything up, and why, he's obviously a very horrible president who has no idea what he's doing. Anyways, tell me what you think in the comment section. It's your boy, Sauceman X. I'm checking the fucking out of your page.